10 years ago, I had an unforgettable experience in the form of a writing assignment. I was asked to write 10 pages about someone I was really angry with, but to write not from my perspective, but rather from the perspective of that person as a child. And if I didn't know about their childhood, I was asked to invent stories that seemed likely. I heard these instructions and I thought, what a waste of time. What could I possibly learn about this person by fictionalizing their childhood? As I began to write, I grew surprised at how this exercise was jogging my memory. Each time I started to make up a story about the person's childhood, I would recall details from their life that I hadn't thought of in years. And in the few cases that I was really stuck, I found it easy to invent stories that seemed possible. After having written 10 pages, I felt more empathy for this person than I would have ever thought possible. I suddenly understood the words of the author Graham Greene, that hate is just a failure of the imagination. Since I'm a classical pianist, I then considered how to apply this exercise to music. For years, my teachers had suggested that in order to perform more convincingly, that I should enter into the world of the composer. And I really struggled with this because I thought this would make me feel like an imposter, that I wouldn't feel like myself on the stage. It wasn't until I interpreted this advice as an exercise in empathy, as a chance to connect with the composer across time and space, that I began to feel free at the piano. This brings me to the topic I'd like to discuss today, given today's conference theme of Imagine, and given the recent increase in hate crimes in many parts of the world. I'd like to offer 3 ways of using music to strengthen our powers of imagination, and thereby to strengthen our powers of empathy, our ability to imagine ourselves in the place of others. So the first way of using music to this end is through the active listening experience, actively imagining within the context of the music. Composer Aaron Copland reminds us that music provides the broadest possible vista for the imagination, since it's the most abstract of the arts. I'm going to play for you some music to give you a chance to imagine as you listen. I'll be playing Scheherazade by the composer Rimsky-Korsakov. This music is inspired by the ancient stories known as 1001 Nights, in which Scheherazade distracts a sultan from executing her by telling him fascinating cliffhangers night after night for 1001 nights. So Scheherazade's imagination saves her life. This music is written for a full orchestra, and so I've adapted it for the piano for today. So this is the music that Rimsky-Korsakov wrote to represent the terrifying sultan. And then he wrote this to represent Scheherazade telling her stories. So you're going to hear these as I play. We'll each have very different associations to the music, and we can't always control these associations. For instance, Rimsky-Korsakov, the composer, had the neurological condition known as synesthesia. So he would involuntarily associate certain musical harmonies with colors. So he would describe the key of B major as a gloomy, dark blue with a steel shine. I'll be playing in the keys of E major and G major, which he would have processed as sapphire blue and brownish gold. So we can never hear the music exactly as the composer would, or even as a person sitting next to you would. But the important thing is just to actively explore different possibilities of association. As Rimsky-Korsakov wrote in his memoirs on this subject, he preferred to only slightly direct the listener's imagination, and he preferred to leave the details to the mood and the will of each listener. So, keeping his words in mind, I'll play for you a short excerpt, and I hope you will enjoy listening with an active imagination. I'll stop there, but I hope you notice the appearance of Scheherazade in the middle. Thank you. Taking this active listening a step further, a second way to use music to strengthen our imagination is to learn an instrument. It's one thing to imagine as we listen, but we can take this even further when we have to communicate our ideas through performance, in the same way that having to write 10 pages was so effective for me. To give you an example, when I play the music of Rimsky-Korsakov, it helps me to remember that he was not just a composer, but also a naval officer. He joined from a very young age the Imperial Russian Navy, and he titled the last section of Scheherazade, "The Ship Breaks Against a Cliff, Surmounted by a Bronze Horseman." So when I play this section of the music, I imagine the ocean rising and falling, and Rimsky-Korsakov as a young naval cadet in awe of the waters, and I try to project this as I play. So I'll demonstrate for you. You'll hear the waters getting stormy and rough. I want to stop to point out this section. So the music representing the Sultan has been transformed into this. Suggesting that Scheherazade's stories have transformed the Sultan over time into someone with empathy who's not going to kill her. So I'd like to imagine this transformation as I play. So you can see that the music performing offers us so many opportunities to imagine and embody experiences that are foreign to us. In the words of the pianist Cadogan, the musical score is the sleeping beauty, and the performer is the prince bringing it to life. As we become better at the instrument, we start to internalize it, and this improves our ability to imagine music in silence. I've demonstrated that in this video. I start off playing the composition on a kitchen table. Researchers have seen that the region in our motor cortex that controls our fingers expands whether we are physically playing or imagining. Oh, there's no sound. Well, you can imagine. This brings me to a third way of using music to strengthen our imagination, that of composing. The composer Bruce Adolph points out that if we can imagine the music that we've heard and change some elements, then we started composing. Just like when I had to remember someone's childhood stories and extrapolate, I was starting to write fiction. We can practice empathy when we compose by taking whatever we are really moved by, whether it's someone we love or a story in the news or the character of Scheherazade, and we can ask ourselves, how would this exist in a musical form? And classical music is full of examples of this, ranging from every possible feeling and experience, from Haydn's 18th century opera, The World on the Moon, to Rachmaninoff's Isle of the Dead, Prokofiev's satirical opera, For the Love of Three Oranges. Beethoven has a great piece that became known as Rage Over a Lost Penny. So there's endless examples. So I'll demonstrate this method of composing with one final performance for you. And this is of my latest violin and piano composition called Once There Was and Once There Wasn't. The title is the opening line of fairy tales in the Middle East. So it's like saying once upon a time. And this will feature the incredible violinist Heather Powell. I'm so honored to have her on the violin part today. So I hope you will enjoy using the music to imagine the worlds of others, whether through active listening or through learning to play an instrument or through composing. Music provides endless opportunity to practice empathy. In the words of Alfred Adler, seeing with the eyes of another, listening with the ears of another, feeling with the heart of another. We'll just be playing the ending of the composition in the interest of time. So thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.